everybody, and welcome to Reed's Read Spider-Man Crawlspace Edition. Takes us out at the SpidermanCrawlspace.com. Well, everybody, it's time to, of course, kick off and do our review, of course, for Amazing Spider-Man 29, aka 993, written by Joe Kelly and art by Pete Woods here, as we get into finally the birth of Spore. So, how did the long-awaited 2-year storyline finally come here as we get introduced to, of course, our new supervillain? Well, let's go on the pros. Believe it or not, the banter that goes on between Peter and Matt Murdock is actually very well done. I do like the fact that Peter is actually talking about improving himself after what just happened the last couple of issues and with Torment, that he really needs to work on his senses. It was kind of interesting, too, how Matt even said, too, about your spider sense and how your body's come comfortable with it. It's been talked about for several years about Peter could actually use your spider sense in a much more better way. Spider-Girl definitely worked that really well, saying about how she was able to sense where a villain is less dangerous, so then that way she could actually attack better, as well as there's been times too, and Ben Reilly said he could actually use it to hone in on what was a danger versus it was. Because one thing it is Peter has gotten to the point here, otherwise, like he said, he would see everything as a danger every day. Let's face it, every time you walk and move, you have a dangers of anything, whether you're gonna stub your toe to somebody pushes you. So I do like that. I also did like the little piece that was actually between Robbie and everything. Yes, they talk about pre-diabetes and what Randy's been up to, but I do like the fact that Spider-Man goes to him talking about what happened with Torment and Ventum and the death spiral, even talk about the cousin, and even saying like it could expose your identity. And I do like he's kind of met that, because as he says, he doesn't want to be responsible for the death of a family member he didn't know anything about. So I do like that Peter is actually working on that too. And also, I have to say, despite everything, Brian's powers actually are very interesting. I mean, one thing about fungi, as they say, how they can cause mushroom, it's really interesting because in a way, him as Spore is like a magical mushroom abilities with the hallucinations, the mind controls, the tripping, the ability to tell truth, which has actually scientific, or the fact that he can actually regenerate parts of his everything from his face to his fingers if they get cut or hurt. It's actually very, very actual well done in sci-fi, and actually kind of gives an original piece to it. It's actually not too bad. Also, how Peter's unknown cousin Cormac, or as we call it, Mac, actually shows up at the feast center. Actually is very interesting because May says, you look familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But saying that she doesn't really know him, so there's a little bit more fact that she does not know who this relative is. And it actually goes in a little bit more talk to how Spider-Man even talked about how Torment's powers work. There were relatives that even Eddie Brock and Mary Jane didn't know about, including that the Shocker was a distant cousin of Mary Jane. So it's very interesting how he even says too, you really can't always know exactly who's family, and sometimes you have long lost pieces. So it is interesting. And the fact that Cormac is trying to, whatever the evidence was in the free comic book day of him just trying to figure out who Aunt May is. And of course we see old Big Rick too, still doing what it is as they're trying to put the feast center back together, which is sad because of all the death and everything that happened in it, that they're trying to move on to it. So it's actually a nice little piece with the volunteer work. Cons, however, I have to say the cons kind of come in right away with Peter at the diner here, where the head manager or waiter is basically, hey, I need this, what are you gonna do? And he comes thing, I mean, because I like it. Here's the fact is, this is a thing that artists have to do, and it's not like Pete Woods is not a well-known artist, and he's been able to do crowded scenes, everything, but never once in this page when Peter is trying to do these apologies and whatever had happened with him flaking and him in space or anything, from Randy to, yes, even Shay's mention, does it look like that table needs to be done? And actually it shows that Peter pays for everything and so forth, and then he leaves a $2 tip, which the guy gets mad about. $2 for 4 hours, what a loser. I'm like, okay, enough. I'm sorry, directly at the writers and editors of Spider-Man, get over the loser part. Just get over the loser part. You know what? People do much worse in the real world with this. And the fact that you're trying to play that Peter is trying to do it, he's actually paying for his meal, actually doing food, who's unemployed, and this guy is mad he gets a $2 tip for 4 hours, and he was constantly pastoring for the whole thing. Hey, I need this table. Hey, you gonna do anything else? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, what is going on? There's only 3 times do we see anybody actually sit here, like we're in the panel here, back here we have a guy with a back hat, and there's somebody on the far end over there. Never does it look like this place is crowded. You know what? Some people will sit there. Yes, everybody is different and everything else, but you know what? They just had to slip in that loser Peter again. Yeah, we get it. Get over yourself, Joe Kelly. Get over yourself, Nick Lowe. Also with the Guardians of the Galaxy Light here, I mean, it is interesting. They've now moved from really the Fantastic Four's headquarters to Peter's apartment. It actually is kind of funny. He talks about 3 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment with everything and a pet and everything else too. But here's the thing. We don't care. Glitch is a cool character. Ray is very interesting. I like the fact she's actually gotten into TV and drama. I think that was a funny joke. And even Glitch saying, like, ugh, the things that people do for stupid, mindless information. But yes, it's a thing. And once again, Simbi, nobody cares. I think the funniest thing is when Peter gets so annoyed, he actually webs Simbi up to just sit there and basically walks out the door. I do like the fact that Peter is trying to figure out with Glitch to maybe update his technology and so forth, which is very, very interesting. And of course, everything that happens, like with Glitchy eating up the webbing and spragging it all over him. We don't care about these characters. I'm sorry. We do not care about these characters. They're very interesting. They have some interesting backgrounds, but we don't care. Stop putting them in there. I'm sorry. Go get your miniseries. Just do that. And another thing is, too, I have to say is the back thing is when, Peter is hallucinating, is under mind control, he actually confesses that, yes, it wasn't me. It was my evil clone, Ben Reilly. Oh, come on, Peter. You can't have an evil clone. That's the stupidest thing. Please tell me what it is. And, he's, showing that he's unmind and done the mind control to the whole staff of Rand Corp and had them show all the evidence to him, all the confessions. He even does some creepy stuff talking about, the woman he was attracted to and so forth. But the problem is with all this is Brian kind of admitted saying himself, I felt, your life was worse than mine, but you know what? It wasn't too bad. We were friends. Come on, just tell me why you turned me into a freak of nature. And it makes sense and everything. But the fact that, Peter says, is he doesn't confess he's Spider-Man, but I also like the fact that hallucinations do affect him. That is well-known continuity that alcohol and other things do affect Peter differently. And the fact he hits him so hard, because we know that if Peter did not hold back some of his punches, he would actually knock people's heads off. And here he really kind of doesn't. It's actually a very creepy effect here. But even Brian's going, you've been working out, Pete. You got to tell me more. I'm like, okay, are you not getting it here that Peter is, they're not saying he's Spider-Man. That's the point of everything else. But it's kind of along the lines of Brian, put it together. Just put it together. It has some strong issues, and I think the artwork by Pete Woods is fantastic. I've always loved Pete Woods. In fact, in the last several years as an artist, I think he's gotten very good. I am going to give the story a C. There's some interesting things here. I like the character moments the most between Spider-Man and Robbie and between Daredevil and Spider-Man were well done, and there were some nice little pieces too. But we got story subplots that just refuse to end because the writer wants to think we care. And despite everything it's been building with Spore the last couple issues, it's kind of a cool concept, but at the same time it's along the lines of, really, he can't just buy that was an evil clone. But, he can grow fingers back, his faces, he has to be able to mind control people, give them a hallucinative effect. But a clone, nah, that's just too much for me. This issue gets a C, and I'm as honest as I'm going to be here. So there you go. And with that, everybody, if you want to check out more about our discussion, if definitely check out our website and Discord on this thing, as well as liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and leave a comment or anything about discussion here. We'd love to do that, as well as find us on our social media platforms. And with that, everybody else, I'm going to call it for right now. And I hope everybody has a wonderful long weekend, and I'll see everybody later on the Crawl Space.